in Joshua, the second chapter. And last week, if you'll remember, we talked a little bit about Rahab, and the spies had gone to her abode, and they were doing their spying operations out of her house. And if you remember, the king got wind of it, and he had summoned her to where, I guess, the castle or wherever the king was at the time, probably not the castle, but his residence, to question her about what was going on. And he wasn't real happy about the situation, having these spies in there, because he knew the reputation of the Israelites, and that they were pretty powerful, and he wasn't real happy about them being in there spying out his kingdom there. So we'll kind of pick up from that thought. Before we go any further, I'd like for Bill, if you would, to lead our minds in prayer.
Heavenly Father, we come before you this morning, and we are so blessed by being able to come together once again this morning to study your word and worship you, and to be together as brothers and sisters, to strengthen one another as we work together to learn more and to praise you more. Be with David as he teaches, help us to understand and to participate in what is discussed this morning. Be with us throughout the rest of this morning. In Christ's name we pray.
All right, so let's pick up with verses 5 and 6. And it said, "It came to pass about the time of the shutting of the gates, when it was dark, that the men went out. Whether the men went, I know not, or what not. Pursue after them quickly, for ye shall overtake them. But she had brought them up to the roof of the house, and hid them with stalks of flax, which she had laid in order upon the roof." So she basically told the king there that they were there, but she didn't know a whole lot about them, and they kind of came in and they had left. And if you hurry up and go chase them, you'll probably catch them, which really was a pretty smart thing on her part, to kind of send them in the opposite direction of where the spies were going, and taking a little bit of pressure off of her. And while they were looking in one direction, she took them up on the roof, and she hid them under some stalks of flax. So she confirmed the fact to the king that he was correct, that these men were in the town, or in the city of Jerusalem, or Jericho, and they she didn't know where they were at. But so that was he kind of lied to him there a little bit. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. It was a white lie. Yeah, where the hell that thought? We're going to talk about that a little bit. So in the original text, the word that was used for the night indicated that it was right there about dusk, when it was just about time to shut the gate. The night was coming on, and she was basically kind of telling me, you shut the gate a little bit early, and you might catch them, or something like that. She's given him some kind of deception that could be used to try to save him. Now we see here that she used these flax stalks, and this was something that grew quite often in the area, and they grew to a height of 3 to 4 feet, and they were the thickness of a reed, and it was probably also grown quite a bit there in the plain of Jericho, because the climate in Jericho resembles the climate that was there in Egypt. And really, this would be a very good thing to hide people under, because you could pile it up on top of them, but it wouldn't crush them. And they would pile these reeds, or this flax, up on top of the roof to kind of insulate the house a little bit from the sun. So it wasn't an unusual thing for the roofs back then to have these flax stalks up there. And she just made the best advantage of of the situation as far as what she had to work with to hide the spies. So we see here that she flat lied to the king. And if you'll remember, we talked about that Hammurabi oath that last week. She basically broke that. And lying to the king is usually not a good thing to do in that day and time, because they didn't think twice about putting somebody to death for something like that. But you've got to kind of look at the motive that she used for the lie. She didn't do it in a manner where she got any benefit from the lie. The lie that she told was basically to protect the spies, and she was doing everything that she could to keep them from being arrested, because she knew that they would absolutely be put to death if they were caught. So no matter how you cut the thing, she lied to the king. And Kevin, you brought up there about it was a white lie, but a lie is a lie. And you have to just because it was mentioned in the text here doesn't necessarily mean that it's allowable or that it was praiseworthy, but it was necessary in order to keep the spies safe from what was going on. And she was convinced of the miracles which God had wrought for his people, and she acted in faith that God was going to protect her and somewhere along the line make what she did right. And it wasn't it wasn't a malicious type of thing. So even if Rahab had not acted to save herself and her family from destruction, the motive was her faith in God, that God was going to take care of things. And obviously it worked out well for Rahab, because we know that in the New Testament in Hebrews, it was recorded that she was justified by her works. I'm sorry, that's in James 2:25. My brain is dead today. So I mean it was a lie, but obviously God had forgiven what she had the lie that she had told, and it was justified later on by the faith that she had. And she wasn't a Christian then, she wasn't a Jew. She was in all fairness, she was a heathen in the sight of God. And heathens back in that time, they had basically very little moral code. So she did what she thought was necessary under the thing. Comments about that verse?
Show you there's nothing new. The idea of taking flax, especially people who weave, and putting it on the roof is still done in the Middle East. I mean, it's obviously you're using the heat of the sun in the Middle East. It's a great benefit in that. So they still put flax on the roof to dry.
One commentary I read said they laid it up there to dry, and it probably was March or April time of year.
Mm-hmm. And not only that, but it gave them some insulation, against the sun. Other comments about that verse?
Nowadays, people will lie and say, "Well, that's the unjustified means." And use that excuse. And the other one is, "Well, doing this wrong or saying this wrong is the greater good."
Right. Well, and I mean, I think it's fair to say that everybody in this room at one time or another has told a lie, and that's why we go to God in prayer and we ask for forgiveness for the stuff that we did, because it's a weakness sometimes. So I mean, she didn't do anything that we haven't all done too. So I mean, that's and it was for a good cause. And if she would have told the truth, might have been a whole different story. Any other comments? All right, let's look at verse 7. And the men pursued after them the way to Jordan upon the fords, And as soon as they which pursued after them were gone out, they shut the gate. So assuming the spies, or the assumption would be that the spies had fled back to the camp of Israel, and the assumption could maybe be made that these men of Jericho were searching along the road, from the city to the place where the travelers forded Jordan. In other words, they were going to go back the same way that they came. And sometimes that's not always a good idea. And we really don't know exactly, how it's not recorded how they went back. The distance that we're talking about here is about 5 miles from Jericho to the fords of Jordan. And from what I have gathered, there were several places along the River Jordan where it was where you could go and ford the river. And I've never seen the River Jordan. I don't know if it's got dams or anything like that on it, but I think about there over in the wellness center. There's some pictures of Cerrito and Canova from back in the early 1900s, and it shows the Ohio River. And down at Virginia Point, I mean, it looked like you could almost walk across it before they put in the dam system. Now, there was obviously other places where you weren't able to do that, but I would suspect that the River Jordan was the same way. There was places where it was rather deep, and there was places where you could walk across it.
The information I found was that this ford, it averaged about 3 feet deep.
Mm-hmm.
It's average, so sometimes higher, sometimes lower.
And you think about it, even today, and it's on the news just about every day. Down there at the Rio Grande, you've got people coming across the river. They're walking across, and they're bringing their kids across. So I mean, just because it's a river doesn't necessarily mean it's that deep. Now, here, along where we live, they'll guarantee you 18 feet in the channel, but you go 8 to 10 feet off of the bank, it's really not that deep. Some places it's probably as shallow as maybe 6 feet, maybe 4 feet. I mean, down around Virginia Point, it's you can wade out there a little bit, and it's really not that deep. But then it drops off into the channel. So obviously, wherever this ford was, it was something. It was a place that was known to everybody at that time. It's also reasonable to conclude that, even though they did return the same way, the king's messengers, they went straight to that ford, because that's they were trying to cut them off in the deal, and they did everything right. They locked the gates. That way, if they were inside, they kept them in, and then they went straight to where the closest ford was for them to pass. So, it says here, as soon as they which pursued them went out, they shut the gate. And like we talked about last week, there was a group of individuals that their job was to protect the city and keep the gates, keep control of the gates. So as soon as they went out, they shut they shut the gate to prevent, if they were still in town, to prevent their escape. But obviously they were on the roof of Rahab's house. Comments about that verse? All right, let's look at verses 8 and 9. And before they were laid down, she came up unto them upon the roof, and she said unto them, to the men, I know that the Lord hath given you the land, and that your terror is fallen upon us, and that all the inhabitants of the land faint because of you. So, because of all of the things that she had done, the men had escaped the problem of being captured by by the soldiers. And as soon as the officers had left the house, she went to the spies that were there, that she had concealed upon the roof, and they were they were there, and she was talking to them, and probably they didn't think a whole lot about her going back up on the roof, because in that day and time, that was a place where sometimes people went in the evening time to get some relief from the from the heat and things like that. They didn't have air conditioning back then. So basically, what she did is she confessed to them that she believed the things she had heard, and she believed that God had given the land to the Israelites, and that there was going to be a dread that was going to fall on the Canaanites. And she talked about us. It's going to come upon us, the people of of Jericho. And I'm sure the word had gotten around that when they came into an area to take the area, they destroyed everything. They killed everybody. They killed all the animals. They did a total destruction, kind of a burnt earth type of seizure. And it was a bad thing. It was something to be despaired. So she described this as a despair of the Canaanites, and it's an expression that was used to show that these things were going to come to pass. It's similar to what was written in Exodus 15 and 16. It says, "And then the dukes of Edom shall be amazed, the mighty men of Moab trembling shall take hold upon them, all the inhabitants of Canaan shall melt away. Fear and dread shall fall upon them. By the greatness of thine arm thou shalt be still as a stone, till thy people pass over, O Lord, till the people pass over which thou hast purchased." So it was a dreadful situation for the inhabitants of the area, for the children of Israel to come in and take the land. Now, this was a fulfillment of the promise that was made several times in the Old Testament. One in Exodus 23 and 27, it says, "I will send my fear before thee, and will destroy all the people to whom thou shalt come, and I will make all thine enemies turn their backs upon thee." And then also in Deuteronomy 2 and 25, it says, "The day I will begin to put the dread of thee and the fear upon the nations that are under the whole heaven, who shall hear report of thee, and shall tremble and be in anguish because of thee." And then also in Deuteronomy 11 and 25, "There shall no man be able to stand before you, for the Lord your God shall lay the fear of you and the dread upon you upon all the land that ye shall tread upon, as he hath said unto you." So the word about the children of Israel had preceded, into Jericho, because they saw what happened to all these other nations, that they were utterly destroyed. And Rahab understood this very well, that there was going to be death and destruction in the city of Jericho. Comments about that verse? All right, let's look at verse 10. "For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when ye came out of Egypt, and what ye had did unto the two kings of the Amorites that were on the other side of Jordan, Sihon and Og, whom ye utterly destroyed." So she was aware of the report of the drying up of the Red Sea, which was discussed in Exodus the 14th chapter, and she was aware of the defeat of all these kings, the Amorites and all of them, and the conquest of their kingdoms that produced this effect upon the Canaanites. And these were no small kingdoms, and these were no small armies that the children of Israel overcame. They were outnumbered quite a bit, but yet because God was on their side and they were doing what God told them to do, He gave them the victory. And even in the last of these occurrences, the omnipresence of God had been visibly displayed, and it was foretold by Moses that that these things were going to happen. Of course, Joshua understood this, and I'm sure that he passed this information on to these two spies, that that God was going to protect them in this deal, and this was this was a done deal, and it surely gave them confidence in the things that they were going to do. And I think that Rahab could even see the providence of God in the protection that was given here to the spies and the situation that was going on there. And the word that's translated utterly destroyed in the Hebrew is a word called hiram, and it's a technical term for the practice of completely destroying the spoils of war as a way of consecrating them to the deity. So this was a practice even of the heathen. When they would go into an area, they would completely destroy all the spoils of war, and that was a form of sacrificing and consecrating the land to the deity. The children of Israel were doing the same thing to God. They were completely destroying everything in accordance to His will, and by doing that, they were honoring God by doing the things that He wanted them to do. So God had proved Himself more powerful than any of the claimants that claimed these other deities. And the irony of the situation existed in the fact that Israel's enemies recognized this when Israel did not. Israel didn't understand the power that they had, but the people that they were going up against did.
Let's think about what Rahab is saying here. The reputation of the Israelites among the Canaanites and all the other people in that area just kept growing, because it had been 40 years since what happened at the Red Sea. They knew about it. A little bit later down the road, but still off in the distance, was what happened to the Amorite kings. They knew about it. And they kept the story alive. It wasn't like, well, it's here in my mind today and gone tomorrow. No. They knew that something was happening with these people. Something was really special about these people, and good things were happening to them, despite the fact they were wandering in the wilderness for 40 years, and we better pay attention.
Well, they had studied their history, and they understood the situation, and it had to be a bad thing for the people of Jericho to know that no matter what they did, no matter how powerful their army was, they were going to be destroyed. And that would would put fear in anybody when no matter what you're going to do, you're going to lose in a situation like that. Any other comments about verse 10? All right, let's move on to verse 11. And as soon as we had heard these things, our hearts did melt. Neither did there remain any more courage in any man because of you, the Lord your God. He is God in heaven above and in earth beneath. So Rahab proceeded to tell them, the transferring, the feelings of her own heart to her countrymen. She had the same mindset that the rest of her countrymen had. And obviously, the king was worried about the situation, or he wouldn't have done what he did. And they sent out all these people looking for. Basically, they sent out a posse, is what they did, and they had to assemble this group of people. And you think about it, if we assembled a posse here in Cerrito to go after somebody, how long do you think it would be before everybody knew about it? Say it wouldn't take very long. It was probably the same. It was probably the same situation there. So the word kind of spread around the people rather quickly that these things were going on, and like Bill said, they knew the reputation of the Israelites, and they were. Not only did Rahab understand it, but I'm sure most of the other people did too, and they were fearful of the things that were going to happen, and she understood very clearly that Jehovah is the God of gods, and He reigns over heaven and everything on the earth, and He was more powerful than any of the other gods or any of the other deities that these other groups worshipped. So, this was basically a confession of her faith in the power of God. And in a lot of cases, her faith was a whole lot stronger than the children of Israel, and she had obtained it honestly by seeing the things that goes on, and she confessed his faith through the to the spies there, that she understood the gravity of the situation that was about to take place. And we're going to see as we go on, she's going to try to negotiate herself a deal, because she didn't want to end up like everybody else is going to end up. And she was going to leverage the things that she had done to help the children of Israel into an advantage to her and her household. So we must be careful not to overestimate her confession of faith in the verse, because she had come to the place of her faith in God, but she did not become a mature believer immediately like anybody else did. She has the concept, but she doesn't have all the details of the concept. So she understood the power of God, but she obviously probably didn't understand all of the items of worship, things along that line, that in the depth that the children of Israel does or did. But she did understand the miracles of the things that God could do for the benefit of his people. Comments about those verses? Right. So let's move on to verses 12 through 14. Now therefore I pray you, swear unto me by the Lord, since I have showed you kindness, that ye will also show kindness unto my father's house, and give me a true token, and thou wilt save alive my father and my mother and my brethren and my sister, and all that have and delivered our lives from death. And the men answered her, Our lives for yours, if ye utter not this other business. And it shall be, when the Lord hath given us the land, that we will deal kindly and truly with thee. So after she made this confession and talked to the spies, she understood that she was going to, without the help of these spies, she was going to have the same fate that the rest of the people there in the city were going to have. So she extracted a promise from the spies that, I've done these good things for you. Now you have to protect me and my family from the things that's going to happen. And what she wanted was an oath, or she wanted the spies to swear to her that that these things were going to happen. And this oath was a sign of their fidelity on that when the Jericho was captured, that they would do what was necessary to save her. And they basically gave their word that her household, her parents, her brothers, her sisters, would all be taken care of. And obviously the spies would have gone back to Joshua and made arrangements for this to happen. And this was a true token. It was a sign of truth, and it was a guarantee that these things were going to happen on her behalf. Now this sign consisted in nothing but the solemn oath, which were confirmed, and the assurances given by the spies themselves. Whether they actually had this authority to do that, it's not really revealed, but it's obvious that we know from history, and we know from continuing on in the in the study, that whatever mechanism it was to make this happen, the spies made it happen, and they were true to their word, and they did what was necessary to make sure that the lives of the family of Rahab was saved. So God was going to punish everybody else, but they were going to be, they were going to be spared. And through the name of God is not really expressed, but it was implied in the fact that the words were described as a swearing, by God. And obviously God approved of the things that the spies did because, the oath that they made was upheld by God. And when the Jericho was destroyed, obviously, the family was taken care of. So the spies coupled their assurance with this condition. Okay, we will uphold our end of the business if you don't tell anybody what we were doing here and what the ultimate goal was that we were trying to achieve. In other words, don't betray us. Keep your mouth shut. Don't betray us. And if you do that, then you're going to be shown, you're going to be shown mercy and truth in the things that were done. Comments about that verse? All right, let's move on to verse 13 or 15. Then she let down by a cord through the window, for her house was upon the town wall, and she dwelt on the wall. Now, remember, we talked about last week that it was a very unusual situation for somebody to have a house that was built right up against the wall and had some type of access to the outside of the wall. So she was going to use this to the advantage of the spies because they've already closed up the gates, which is probably a good thing because all the porters and the soldiers were on the inside, and they probably didn't do a whole lot of patrolling on the outside. So she let down some type of cord, and obviously that was some type of rope that that was strong enough to lower these people down. And you would kind of have to think that Rahab was probably a pretty strong woman to be able to hold the rope and help them, get down get down the rope, unless she had some of the people in her house, assist with this deal. I would suspect it was some type of hemp rope that was used here, and I would suspect it was probably some type of weaved or twisted type of rope, similar to the hemp rope that you see nowadays. So this was obviously done with great sequencing, and she I kind of a couple of different ways you can think about this. Either number one, she wanted to be so secret that she wouldn't let any of the other family members help her do this, or she maybe had some trusted family members that were present at the time and knew the situation that was going on. But whatever it was, she lowered them down the side of the wall, kind of in the same manner that Paul was let down the wall in Damascus in a basket in Acts 9 and 25. Some of the ancient scholars seem to think that this rope or this cord that was used is probably the same rope and cord that we're going to talk about a little bit later on. That's going to be used as a sign. So she had a good location. She was able to lower the two spies out of the house down onto the ground so that they could escape the situation. And it was obviously the providence of God that they were sent to this house that had these arrangements so that they could escape the city without having to go through the walls, because the gates had already been closed and the people were out. The people were out looking for them. Comments about that verse? All right, let's move on to verse 16. And she said unto them, Get you to the mountain, lest the pursuers meet you, and hide yourselves there 3 days until the pursuers be returned, and afterwards may you go your way. So, they were going to be traveling by night, and they were going to be hiding themselves during the daytime, which is classical escape and evasion techniques that we use to this day. Otherwise, if they would have been moving around during the daytime, there was a pretty good chance that their pursuers who were out there looking for them, were going to find them. So she told them to go to the mountain, which was near the city, and it's supposed to be the same, which is now called Quarantina. And it's a range of white limestone hills that extend on the north side, and it raises to a height of about 1,200 to 1,500 feet. And the sides of the mountain were perforated with a lot of caves, and that gave them a good place where they would be able to hide. And this area, because it has these caves, it's also a very eroded type of area, and some of the descriptions, it kind of looks like chalk. The rock formations kind of look like chalk, and there's also, from what I understand, there's some isolated canyons that over the years have been cut through the limestone cliffs, which would give them some good, a good area to move through without being detected. So she was using her ability and the things that she knew about the area to give them some help in finding a good place to flee to. And we also see there, and Bill mentioned this last week, that she told him to stay there 3 days, and that was the standard time of a pursuit was for 3 days, thinking, well, if you didn't find them in 3 days, then you probably weren't going to find them. And some of the commentators seem to think that the route that they took to get through these mountains was the same route that Jesus talked about in Luke 10 and 30 when the man fell among the robbers. And this was in this same general area, and probably that, they didn't do a whole lot of road construction back then, and they just kind of used the same routes over and over. And this was, this is conjecture by by some of the scholars, but there is some historical, writings that indicate that this may have happened. But this was obviously the same mountains that Josephus was talking about in his writings when he talked about this situation.
It's great common sense use here, because it's kind of like when they go right, you go left. Well, what she did, the pursuers were going east. She said, "You go west," and they did.
Right.
That's where the mountains and the caves were.
They're putting separation between them.
And what's interesting, these caves around what was in Jericho, later Qumran, is where they found the Dead Sea Scrolls back in the late 1940s. It's in the same area geographically.
Mm-hmm. There was a real good thing on the History Channel a couple of weeks ago about the Dead Sea Scrolls and how the Dead Sea Scrolls proved a lot of the history that people were kind of saying, well, it really didn't happen, but the Dead Sea Scrolls revealed the fact that it did. So he basically told them to hide until the pursuers returned, and then they were going to have free passage into the back across Jordan and back to the camp of Israel. So let's see if we can look at verses 17 real quick. We probably won't get through it. And the men said unto her, we will be blameless of this thine oath, which thou hast made us swear. So some think that this discourse which passed between the spies and her was while in the house before she let them down, or otherwise they would have been in danger of being overheard. So the whole affair could have been discovered, because there were people out there patrolling around. So it was probably inside the house before all this happened. And they said that they would be blameless. That is, that they would be faithfully and punctually in keeping the oath that they said that they gave her. And to them, it was a sacred thing. It was a thing of honor that they go through and they do this. So in conclusion, the spies guarded against any arbitrary interpretation and application of their oath by imposing 3 conditions on the non-fulfillment of which they would be released from their oath. So we're going to talk next week about the conditions that they made for this oath to be upheld. So I appreciate everybody's attention and comments today.